What if everything you know about conversion rate optimization, from best practices to button colors, may be completely wrong? Talia Wolf is the founder of Get Uplift and the author of Emotional Targeting. Her agency helps companies like Amplitude, Bitly, and Mercedes rethink how they speak to customers, not by tweaking CTAs or cramming in keywords, but by tapping into the emotions that actually drive decisions. This episode is about the hidden layer beneath every high-performing webpage, the emotional needs your users bring with them. Talia breaks down why traditional CRO overlooks this entirely, and how her emotional targeting framework turns user psychology into strategic insights. We talk about why most B2B landing pages fail, why AI still can't write persuasive copy, and what really makes a homepage convert in 2026. There's also a fascinating bit about how social proof works differently depending on whether you're selling a product or a service, and how brands can optimize not just their sites, but their presence across Reddit, LinkedIn, and even LLMs. The tension in Talia's work is this. She's built an entire framework rooted in qualitative nuance, but now faces a world obsessed with automation. Can human emotion scale, and what happens when AI starts defining your brand narrative before a customer even lands on your site? I found myself rethinking how I approach website audits after this conversation, especially around where emotion shows up in the user journey. If you learned something new today, take a second to subscribe to the Page 2 podcast. Leave us a rating or review, and let us know what resonated. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Okay, let's get into it. Welcome to episode 105 of the Page 2 podcast. I'm John Clark, joined by my co-founder at Moving Traffic Media, Joe DeVita.
Hi.
Our guest today is Talia Wolf, founder and CEO of Get Uplift and author of Emotional Targeting. Talia, welcome to the show, and congrats on both the book launch and your new podcast, Heart Before the Cart.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, and thank you. I'm not sure what's harder, the writing of the publishing of the book or the podcast, yet to be determined.
I don't know where you are in the world right now, but we just suffered through the blizzard of 2026. I spent all my time shoveling, listening to all the episodes of your podcast. It's great.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited to hear that. That's good.
It's a lot of work, so we'll check in when you get toward, episode 20 or 50 maybe, and see how we're doing.
I know, I was like 100. I'm like, I'm at 6.
Yeah, it's a journey for sure. But last week we had Garrett Sussman on talking about the psychological aspects of search. And so this feels almost like perfect timing to dig into the emotional side of conversion. But I wanted to start with something that sort of jumped out at me about your business model in general. So Get Uplift does both the, CRO sort of done for you services and the training. A lot of our agencies sort of keep that knowledge close to the vest, right? Because that's sort of job security. How did you decide to both do the teaching and sort of the services? Are you ever worried that, it will work your way out of a job, or is that the point?
That's a great question. Honestly, the reason I do it is because I love it. I probably should worry about, there are people who've taken our courses and have started using our methodology and framework, obviously. But there's a big difference between the clients that hire us and the people that take our courses. So the people that take our courses are usually entrepreneurs, founders, and people who are kind of like they're wearing multiple hats in their own company. And that could be the lawyer, the yoga instructor, the doctor, and it can also be freelancers who are just trying to learn more. I rarely see actual CROs, like conversion optimizers, take the course. It's mostly people who are trying to optimize their funnels and their own conversions. And I love it because I just enjoy teaching so much. So maybe I should worry about it, but I don't.
That's good. That's great. Yeah. So it sounds like almost two distinct audiences, which kind of makes sense.
It does. Yeah. It works for us.
Yep. You talked about the framework. I want to definitely dig into that a little bit. So, client comes on board. Take us through the steps of how you start to set up that. And I believe you sort of named it the emotional targeting framework.
Yes. So the emotional targeting framework is a framework that I developed almost a decade ago, maybe a bit longer. And it's all to do with generating more leads and sales for our clients. But the entire framework is based on emotion and psychology. Our goal is to really understand why people buy from our clients, what the real intent and emotional need is behind their decision-making process, and then use that in order to increase conversions. So when we onboard a new client, and that can be B2B, B2C. We have a lot of e-com. We have cybersecurity. We work with publishers. We work with service providers like moving companies. So really across the board. But whenever we onboard a new client, the first thing we do is research. And we do a lot of research to uncover the decision levers. So mostly our clients know the behavioral aspects of their customers. They know the behavioral data, age, geographical location, gender, browsers, devices. What we aim to uncover is why they buy. What are their pains? What are their hesitations? What are things that they're considering? What other things have they tried that haven't worked for them? And using that information, once we've uncovered it, we then audit the website with a customer first lens. So instead of looking at it just from a best practices lens of, well, you need one call to action button, we look at it from the customer's perspective. Now that I know more about them, does this website serve me? Does this website actually speak the language and tell the stories that our prospects care about? And using that audit, we can then start A/B testing and coming up with hypotheses of the reason this page isn't converting is because strategically it doesn't do this, or because we're missing this information, or there's too much information, and so on. So our entire methodology is built on research first, then auditing, and then optimizing.
So when you get all that data back and you sort of act as that potential customer, is that through sort of like focus groups? In other words, like you have actual potential customers, or is it that you just have such a strong understanding of who that person is, you can sort of act as that person as you're sort of going through the website? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So the research itself is based on multiple types of research. That can be surveys for customers and surveys for visitors. We do interviews. We also do something called social listening and review mining, and we do an emotional competitor analysis. So we do multiple things to gain as many insights as possible. And then using that lens, we'll audit the website. I will say that, yes, having those insights definitely help because we have a checklist. We have questions that we're asking ourselves over and over again for each website to understand based on everything that we've learned, what's the answer here? Yes or no? Are we doing this? Are we not? But in addition to that, we also have our experience, obviously. So it's a lot easier for us to kind of point out what really isn't working or isn't resonating. And it's not really best practices. It's just because we've run thousands of A/B tests at this point. And we have so much research that we can usually identify the strategic issues, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I think one of those, big pieces of research was all of the research you've done around emotional triggers specifically. I might get this number wrong, but I think it was 223 emotional triggers that you actually identified.
Yeah.
Take us through, how do you apply that knowledge? Is it industry specific, or are you seeing these emotions tied to sort of all industries and it's just a matter of which one has a heavier weight?
I love this question. I think that we tend to think about data in segments. So if you are targeting people in Chicago who are between 25 and 34, who have they're a certain age, certain role, certain income bracket, it's easy for us to think in that way. And then that's the people that we're targeting. In the emotional targeting methodology, a 25-year-old from Chicago and a 55-year-old woman in Russia could have the same emotional trigger. It's less about where they're from in terms of the behavioral data, and it's more about their emotional needs. And what we find is that, yes, we have identified over 223 different emotional triggers, but it's not that we are targeting specific ones all the time. It's not that I'm doing research and then saying it's trust and just trust, or it's just, jealousy or something. What we find is that more often than not, it's multiple emotions happening at the same time. We feel negative emotions, we feel positive emotions based on our culture, based on our history, based on our personal experiences. And there's just so much involved in there. So it's less about I'm trying to trigger an emotion and more about resonating with the existing emotions that are already there. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it really is, it's a little hard because I'm always asked what is the most popular emotion? And there
I think
isn't
I had
one.
that question.
There just isn't
I'm not going to
one.
ask it.
Okay, cool.
I have a silly question. Marketing can be very creative. For my career, I haven't spent a lot of time in creative roles, but I had one very smart creative director told me one time the 3 big emotions that you try to tap into when you're building good marketing: fear, envy, and sex. And I know that's like, there's only 3. Like, does everything fall under a set of categories? You have 223. It's hard to wrap your head around. Are there like 5 or 10 big ones you think they fall into?
Those 3 don't fall into the top 10, I would say.
Okay.
They do sound very like 90s. Like when I started doing conversion optimization, not in the 90s, I'm not that old, but when I was doing conversion optimization, when I first got started at like my first agency, the people I was working with, they were like, it's all about selling sex. And I'm like, you're clearly 2 men. Yes. Does sex sell? Does, making people feel that they're going to lose something? Absolutely. Like loss aversion is a huge psychological trigger that really affects people's decision making. Envy is also a big one, but it's not because you're envy of someone. It actually speaks to a bigger cluster of emotions, which is self-image and social image. So we categorize emotions into 2 buckets. There are more, but those are the 2 most important ones, I would say. Self-image are all those emotions that are to do with how I want to feel about myself after I buy a product or hire someone. And it's all about like, I want to feel better about myself. I want to feel more confident. I want to feel like a better parent. I want to feel like I am of value. Social image is all those emotions that are to do with other people, how I want other people to feel about me and think about me. I want other people to be jealous of me. I want other people to think that I'm the go-to person in the office. I want other people to think that I'm, I don't know, good looking, all sorts of different emotions. So when you think about it, like sex, envy, all that stuff, it fits into those categories, but they're not specific to like make this person feel envious. It's more about how do they want other people to think about them, or how do they want to feel about themselves? And I think that's the distinction between like one singular emotion and then understanding how people feel right now. They're feeling lost, or they're feeling jealous, or they're feeling sad, and how they want to feel. And those are kind of the distinctions.
You mentioned triggers, and I want to come back to that in a second, but I was just curious about the cohort of 223. Is there one that you've found recently, or have the emotions that you've identified sort of been consistent over time?
They're mostly consistent. And I would say that what's newer for us is the categorization of the social and self-image. In the past, we just looked at like the rainbow of the different emotions, and now we kind of put them into those clusters. So that's more of a new thing for us in the past few years. But there's so many studies out there about like the different emotions, and there's just, it's nothing. The specific emotions aren't new, and they didn't come from us. We just studied them and found them, but other people and psychologists have found them in the past, just use them for other things.
Got it. I was curious about the triggers just because of, the emergence of AI and being able to say, hey, AI tool, I want to evoke this emotion. Tell me where I need to insert it into the page. Are you seeing any sort of, I don't know, trigger fatigue? Almost like when banner ads came out, right? Like they worked great, and then everyone sort of had a blind eye to them. Are you seeing any impacts from AI around what I should or what I might before respond to versus what I'm getting sort of hammered with today?
The AI situation is really interesting, right? Because I think there was like this huge bubble where everyone was like, AI is coming for your job. It's going to replace everything that you do. And everyone I speak to now is like, AI is just taking up so much of my time. I end up just rewriting everything. Nothing's working. Like it's just making up nonsense. It really is. It's baffling to me, like how much we wanted it in some way to replace a lot of the work that we do, and it actually can't. I think when it comes to emotion, it's the same. We want to think that we can just tell Gemini or ChatGPT, add some trust into this copy, or make people feel a little more happy or excitement. But it rarely works because it's not about this one trigger. It's not about this one emotion. It's about the whole story. And it's about showing people that you understand them. So it's not that like if I just plaster a bunch of social proof on a page, or if I just keep saying, this is 100% like this, and, we've increased conversions by it, that's not the whole story. So AI can only do as much as it can. But at the end of the day, if you're not connecting all the dots between the entire story of this is how you're feeling right now, this is what you've tried before, this is how you want to feel, this is why the things you tried before didn't work. And all that needs to weave in the trust, the happiness, the excitement, the we've got you kind of feeling. And I'm not seeing AI do that. What we have been able to do at Get Uplift, along with a great friend of mine, Sani, is to actually create an emotional grader. So we are able to, so what we do is we allow people, our clients, to put in the copy that they've written, and it will tell them if they're invoking enough trust or what's missing to add some more trust. Like you're missing some numbers, or you're missing some stats, or you're missing this. So that is where I think AI can be great in like helping you assess where things are with a grain of salt, but not actually writing your copy or doing the stuff for you.
Got it. In the trust example, are those criteria sort of driven from like EAT principles, or is it really the research and surveys that you're doing of the real customers and trying to sort of close that gap?
Yeah. So for our clients, we're uploading all of the research that we've done for them, and we're constantly updating that because it's important to continuously run research. And then we're using the GPT in order to give it to other people on the team, in our clients' team, to kind of review what they've written and give them ideas of like, this is some social proof that you can use. This is a story that you can lean on. This is something people really care about that you should highlight. This is maybe a roadblock or something that people are worried or concerned about. So don't forget to mention this when you're writing the email, when you're writing an ad. So it leans heavily on the research that we're running.
Got it. Joe and I worked at the same agency together, which is how we met, Razorfish. And we had lots of really smart, creative people around us, as you mentioned. And they always talked about what you're saying, right? Like you have to tell the story from top to bottom throughout the page. And so I was really curious around, you hear above the fold, below the fold, make sure you have a CTA above the fold is common, quote unquote best practice. Have you found in weaving these emotions into the structure of a page, certain areas where it resonates best? So for example, get something above the fold, or maybe writing the hero, and then sort of reinforce that, right, when someone makes one scroll or arrow down. Any insights there from your research?
Yeah. I mean, the annoying answer is that it depends, right?
Right, of course.
It depends on your prospect. There are really great conversion copywriting formulas out there, like PAS, which is pain agitation solution. So you start with the pain, then you agitate and remind them why this pain really affects them, and then you offer a solution. The reason that works is because someone tested that when you mention someone's pain, what they're actually experiencing right now, that converts, or that keeps people on the page and they will read more. We run tests for our clients sometimes where we start with the pain and we mention, hey, you've been feeling this or you're experiencing that. And we run tests where we're actually showing the desired outcome first. Like you will be able to feel this. You will achieve that. So starting with the actual emotional desire, like how do you want to feel? This is how you're going to feel. And that converts more. So for us, it's not like there's a rule of thumb, like always start with the pain or always start with the promise, but it is usually one of the two. And we definitely see for us that weaving social proof throughout the entire page has huge value. So rather than just like, if we think about the homepage, because that's the easiest page to kind of give as an example, most brands just have the logos kind of stripped, and their hero section. And then at the bottom, they have maybe a few testimonials. For us, what we've tested, and we've seen this over and over and over again, is that if we pair every claim that we make on the website, on the page, with some social proof, whether if that's data, numbers, if it's a quote, some proof, that helps people trust you and convert. So there's pieces that we see repeat themselves over and over again, but it really does depend on the audience.
So amazing. Like these things make total sense, but they take effort, right? And like it's the hard things that typically perform. So if you take the lazy approach, in fact, one thing I noticed on your case studies on your website is like it wasn't just a testimonial. It was like, okay, here's a paragraph about the challenge. And then there was a testimonial speaking about the challenge. And then it was like, okay, here's how we position the solution. And then it was a testimonial about the solution. It was incredible. I'd never seen that done before. So you mentioned the homepage as your example. Maybe outside of page structure, are there specific pages where you found this implementation to be most impactful? Because in an ideal website state, you're not sending everyone to the homepage, maybe for brand, but then of course, ideally, they probably all already know something about you. So is it the service page? Is it the contact page? Like, how do you think about, page breakdown in terms of aligning these emotions?
Definitely depends on the industry. In B2B, we've done a lot of user testing on that, and it will vary, but the main pages that we look at are pricing page, homepage, demo page, or free trial page, depending what they're trying to achieve, case studies, and then of course, product page, where like the product walkthrough. Sometimes that's one page, sometimes it's a few. What we've noticed is a pattern in B2B, and I can talk about e-commerce too if you'd like, but specifically in B2B, what's interesting is most prospects and visitors that come to a homepage will use the homepage as a jumping board. So yes, obviously you're trying to direct people to other pages, but a lot of time in B2B, people just come to the homepage. And so the homepage acts more of a springboard to first I'm going to pricing, then I'm going to integrations, then I'm doing a product walkthrough. Once I've received that information and I've made sure that it's in my pricing range and you have all the integrations that I need, people leave and they go to other places, which we can talk about, where the actual decisions are made. And then they come back to the website and then they'll go to a specific, free trial page or a sign up page or a demo page. So it really changes within the industry. In e-commerce, we see something completely different. When we recently ran a few tests, and it's interesting to see how for some e-commerce stores, it works really well to send people directly to a product page. And for some, you have to send them to the category page because they have to first understand, what is this? What are the products? Who is this company? So it does depend on your industry. It depends on the amount of products that you have. It depends on how well a prospect knows you when they come to your website and so on.
Can I ask a question on the service side? You've got a lot of great examples on the product side. I love the writing you've done on B2B case studies, but for a B2B company that is offering a service, it's the people that they're selling. How deeply should a company go to credentialize its people?
It's a great question. I think now it matters more than ever. Right now, more than ever, people are looking for authenticity. AI and a lot of other things in the world are creating a lot of stress, and people want real life connections with people. In the past, I think, just thinking even 5 years ago, an agency like ours or yours really stood and fell on like how big you were, how many people you have, the logos that you have. We've worked with quite a few service providers by now. We've worked with PR agencies to help them optimize, SEO agencies, really honestly, like all over. And it's so interesting to see that every time it comes back to the people, not just specific, like I want to know who the CEO is, or I need to know who's going to be my account manager, but the feeling of this team that I'm going to connect with, the feeling of who am I hiring? And at the end of the day, there are emotional triggers for your clients too. Sure, they want to increase traffic, or they want to increase conversions, or they want to get mentioned in LLMs, whatever the KPI is. But there's an emotional reason behind that. They need to look good in front of their managers. Someone from up top is saying, use AI, and they have to like do something about that. They also maybe feel like they're behind, and like everyone is writing on LinkedIn on how cool like they're doing an AI when no one's actually doing anything with AI. But there's like serious FOMO and you feel like you're not good enough. So there's a lot of different emotions there. And I think it is really important to address all of that. For service providers like ourselves, we need to understand why people are coming to us. And that's why, John, you mentioned the case studies and how we position them. But we do that on purpose because honestly, like a lot of our leads and our clients that are coming in face similar challenges. And when they read that, they feel seen. It's not another agency just saying, we increase conversions by 300%. Sure, we've done that. But we understand your particular problem and we know where it stems from. So it's about the people and it's about your approach to what you do. Because at the end of the day, there's hundreds of SEO agencies. There's hundreds of CRO agencies. So what makes you stand out is who you specifically are and how you do your work.
Gosh, there's so much in there. I do want to quickly come back to the e-commerce comments you made earlier. So you've talked about the differences between like the B2B consumer and the B2C consumer. Those emotions are very different, right? Like you said, for B2B, it's like, I need to look good in front of my manager versus B2C, where it's maybe like, I want to look good in front of my friends, which is two very like different things. You're going to get different responses from those two groups of people. You talked about the category page, and I feel like in many cases, the category page is like the necessary evil of e-commerce, where you have to group all your products somewhere. You know people are going to visit it, but you don't spend a lot of time there. And then it's really the product page where everything is spent. And on the SEO side, a lot of what we've had to do is figure out ways to get content onto that category page. And in some cases, clients are like, yes, like we should do that. Let's figure out a template. In other cases, it's like, well, we'll give you this text box down here at the bottom of the page and you can throw in your you can throw in your quote SEO text down there, which is not like we want to write for the user and justify why we're putting it there. It's a really long-winded question of how do you use a category page to try to speak to some of those emotions? It seems like a very challenging thing.
A category page for us is very similar to a homepage because oftentimes like ads are directing directly to the category page and a lot of users coming there don't have any context. So we're not trying to sell one product often. Again, I'm kind of like giving you like, this could be different for a different client.
For sure.
Generally, the way we approach it is, hey, you've just arrived here for the first time, so let's give you some context. This is the ultimate result that we deliver. And that is an emotion, that is a feeling, that is something that you get from this brand. And we have a wide range of products that deliver this promise to you. And we'll use a hero image, and we'll use copy as a headline, subhead. Sometimes there's even bullet points. And sometimes we'll use the filter as an actual conversion metric because we want people to filter. We want to see what they care about. We want to get people actually engaging with that page so that then we can prioritize stuff on the category page, but we treat it like a landing page or a home page for people who don't know a lot about us. It's not like we're taking the whole hero section. We're not trying to create like an entire hero section, but we do spend a lot of time building that brand up and talking about it.
I love that. That's really smart. Is the CTA the same? Like, is it like, do you on a category page, are you thinking about, I don't know, other than like see more, view more, see product? Like, are you paying attention to CTAs on the category page?
Yes, depending on their stage of awareness of prospects, so where they are in the buyer journey. Are they just in discovery mode? There are a lot of e-commerce sites where people will land on a category page and they'll scroll through, they'll look at it, they're like, okay, noted, and leave, but they will come back from a text message, from an email, because they saw another ad or someone mentioned the brand based on where people are. If it's easier to make a decision, if we're talking about products that are low cost, or if we're talking about products that are very expensive, depending on where people are in the buyer journey, that's how we'll decide what the CTA is. Often it will be learn more, view more, see more, quick view, stuff like that. One of our clients has just 2 products. They have, the basic and the pro. And then we have, okay, shop now. Because we have a section about each product and we can just send them directly to the product page because we've given them enough information to feel confident to click on a $300 product. But if we don't have that space, then we won't do it.
You talked about, or I guess you sort of teased it for us, which was, people come into a website and then they leave and do research elsewhere. So I want to talk about the social side of this because I feel like it's such a big part of what you do in your framework and sort of building out, who that customer is for a client. I guess just 10,000 foot view, like talk to us a little bit about like what that is. Like what is the process? What are you trying to get out of it? Where do you go to pull that sort of information?
When I was writing the book last year, I didn't realize how big this was going to be because we've been using social listening and review mining for 10 years now as part of our process. And what that means is we literally comb through hundreds of conversations on Reddit, on LinkedIn, on Quora, on YouTube comments, Facebook groups, anywhere where we know our client's audience is spending time. We'll even go through Spotify comments now because that's become a popular thing. So we'll comb through conversations anywhere we can find them. Discord, Tumblr in the past. I don't know. With the sole goal of understanding real decision-making processes. Because what really happens, as I mentioned before, is people come to your website with a kind of a checklist of, pricing, features. Great. Now I'm going to go and figure out where the authentic conversations are happening, if this is real or not. We don't really trust the brands anymore. We trust the community. We trust what people are saying on Reddit, even though Reddit's owned by Google, but whatever. We trust Reddit. We trust LinkedIn. We trust a bunch of communities and people for various reasons that make sense. So for us as a team, we comb through these hundreds of conversations to figure out, okay, what are the pains? What are the hesitations? What are people saying that they hate about this industry or their competitors? What are things they're missing? What are things that they love? And that helps us optimize. Well, look at this incredible story, or look at these, we've been saying this word, but actually people say this. So it really does help us get into people's minds of what they care about the most. And also now it's even easier because in the past we would copy all this stuff, put it into a spreadsheet and spend hours analyzing it. Now it's a lot easier because you have LLMs, so you can give it very specific prompts to look for very specific things, and it makes it a little quicker. Obviously, you have to double check everything, but it's a bit easier. So that's always been our process, and it's been incredible because it usually shapes our messaging dramatically. We recently did this with a moving company just to test. We ended last week. It will be on my podcast in a few weeks.
All right.
Joe's give it to me. But basically what we noticed is that everyone in the past year in the moving industry in America has started talking about being cheap and getting a good quote and pricing. But when we reviewed thousands of these reviews, and what we found is most people were talking about the fact that they were so happy that their items were safe, that people were so careful with their stuff, that everything was boxed neatly, that the way things left their old house arrived in the exact same status when they arrived, And we said, look, we know that the whole industry is kind of shifting, and there's a reason to why they're shifting to pricing talk, but we really believe in this kind of white glove premium service messaging. And we started testing it across multiple tests, and it just constantly increases conversion. So the recent one increased calls by 17% for this company. And that is all thanks to social listening and review mining. So that's one thing. This is my TED Talk, by the way. And the other part, which I'm so excited about, is that it's even more important now because our role as a conversion optimizer has completely changed. We used to only need to optimize the website or landing pages or emails or your assets, right? But now people are using LLMs. People are searching for solutions to pains that they're feeling in ChatGPT, in Gemini, in Perplexity. And AI is spitting stuff out about your brand. But it's not just taking stuff from your website. It's taking the sentiment from all over the web. It's pulling stuff from YouTube. It's pulling things from Reddit. And that's what AI is telling people about your brand. So if you want to actually increase conversions and get good recommendations, it's not enough to just show up in LLMs. You actually have to influence what LLMs are saying about you, which is nuts. And that means that you have to optimize Reddit conversations and you have to optimize off the website. It is imperative or you will lose the whole battle, if that makes sense.
It does. I mean, that was going to be my next question around, so you collect all this information, you see both positive and negative sentiment. Are you also suggesting like strategies to go into those platforms, Reddit, Quora, respond to those comments, create content on the website?
Yes, absolutely. Of course, when you review so many conversations, you also get ideas for content that you should be writing, like articles, because people care about that. But also, yes, as a brand, you should be on Reddit responding to people, and you should be on LinkedIn, and you should be on Facebook groups, and you should be on the podcasts that people are listening to. You should be on the blogs. You have to optimize the narrative all over the web if you want to get good recommendations from inside LLMs. And it's even more important because in the not so distant future, the website will be the last point of conversion, meaning people won't be coming to websites as much. They'll be using, they'll go into ChatGPT and ask it to look for, blue sweaters or dog leashes or an accounting software. And the LLM will spit out 5 recommendations based on everything, and it will impact the decision. And when someone clicks through, it will be because they're ready to convert. They're not going to your website anymore to make a decision. So you have to influence everything everywhere, which is scary, but also great.
The challenge a couple of our clients have had, like just going all in on Reddit, is how to be authentic. Do we go in there as our company, or do we find some stakeholders at the company and try to use their personalities? This seems like a tough question to try to influence on Reddit as a company. How have you approached it, or given advice to approach it?
We approach it in both ways, basically. One is we absolutely have a brand account on Reddit, including a subreddit with the name of the brand so that you can control that narrative and you can see what people are saying and you can discuss conversations. But we also always recommend that the executive team and the people in the marketing team are just identifying as individual people or who work at this company but are now commenting. So you need to do both is the answer.
I've always thought a company's cohort of employees is their sort of secret weapon, especially when they're of a larger size. Have you had any challenges or, maybe successes in getting that cohort sort of on board with something like this? Because, and it kind of makes sense. Some people don't want, on Reddit, for example, your username is rarely your name. And some people like that privacy, right? I don't know if I'm really asking a good question, but how have you influenced, the cohort of employees to help with that amplification?
So I think the key first is identifying those champions within your organization. And oftentimes the organizations are actually the ones who are more worried about asking their colleagues to actually do something about it than the people themselves. When people are happy at where they work and they're happy to talk about it. And if they want to stay anonymous, then they can create a new account and, talk about that. But I find it's a lot less hard to actually ask employees to share and talk and converse when they're very happy at where they work. The biggest pushback is usually from the executive team where they're like, but what if they build their own brand and they leave? I'm like, well, that's part of the work. Like, that's what happens. And honestly, like, you should wish that on your employee. but generally, yes, that happens when you start, and it's not just in Reddit, right? It's with everything. You want your people on the team posting on LinkedIn. Like, that's important. And sometimes that means that your employee will build a very big brand. And if you're a good employer, they will stay, or you will wish them success in their great endeavor. But they're still, everything that they've posted so far works for you, and you're helping them and they're helping you. And so it does require a lot of conversations, but honestly, the biggest pushback is from the organizations themselves and not the individual people.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. You never know if you don't ask, right?
Right.
I've heard you mention a couple of times that best practices aren't always the best approach. And one of the things that I heard you talk about was color. And, not being a super creative person either, I've always sort of seen these infographics. It's like, okay, if you want to in bold, trust, use blue. And you've said that is not accurate. So talk to us a little bit about that. How do you think about color in the scope of like an A/B test?
I love how you were like, that's not accurate. And I said, that's BS. That's my word. Yes. So the thing about color psychology is that it's a very sexy kind of marketing thing and everyone likes to write about it. And there's beautiful infographics. And I think when I got started out in my first agency, I made an infographic about it because it was cool and infographics were all the rage. But they are very misleading because color psychology doesn't work like that. It's not that red equals anger and blue equals trust. At this point, there is also the bandwagon effect. So the bandwagon effect is a psychological trigger that basically focuses on the fact that we tend to go with the masses. If a lot of people are doing one thing, it feels less risky to do it too. So if you are in finance and every bank you see online is using the color blue, then to de-riskify, to kind of de-risk, and take less risks, you'll probably go with blue. So there's that bandwagon effect. But generally, the way color psychology works is it is impacted by multiple things. So blue can mean one thing to me and can mean a whole other thing for you in terms of my culture, in terms of my experiences and my emotions. For some people, blue is a depressing color. For some, it reminds them of the sky. And so there's all sorts of different things in there. And my biggest issue is I really don't like when people just say, this is the only way to do something and there's no other way. Very similar, we have sayings like, never use a carousel. It's the worst thing you can do. And for years, I agreed. And then a client made me run a test on a carousel on a web page and it increased conversions to my dismay. And now it's there. So there's just this whole idea of like, this is the only thing. Green means freshness and this means healthy. It's just, it's not how it works. And our culture and our experiences really have a huge impact on how we are affected by color. And a good example by that is even McDonald's, where in Europe, for a very long time, they changed all McDonald's branches to green. And you won't see that in the States. In the States, it's red, right? Red and yellow. I don't go to McDonald's, I'm vegan, but generally but in Europe, they're green because Europeans as a whole, not completely, not judging, care more about health and like what they eat and what they consume. In the past, this is all like in the 2000s, like early. So they rebranded to green and that actually had a huge impact in Europe, but it's because it's Europe. I think if Americans saw a green McDonald's, they'd be like, this is weird. Goodbye. Right? I mean, it's what
this is too healthy for us.
This is weird. Green, the color of puke. I mean, it's just understanding where you are and who you're speaking to and why you're doing things.
I know we only have you for a couple more minutes, so I want to jump to go ahead, Joe.
I had to follow up for where you are. I've been trying to get this question in for the full hour. You're a conversion rate optimizer. You want to improve conversion rate. Do you start these conversations with, here's the industry benchmark, or do you start the conversation with, here's where you're at, here's where I think you can go?
The latter.
Yeah. So you say you're converting at 1%. We're going to do this one test. We hope to get to 1.1%. And you just keep trying to build. You test to build and you go higher and higher. You don't worry as much about the competition or the industry. You got to start where you're at.
Yes. And also we grade emotional resonance. So we have a set of kind of a quiz that we fill in as a company when we're doing client work and when we're doing our research, and we grade the website where they are on an emotional resonance from 1 to 10. 10 meaning you're doing amazing, your messaging, your storytelling, your design, your UX, like everything is customer first and really works towards meeting people where they are on an emotional level. 1 being you're doing nothing and everything's about you. It's all about your features and your pricing and your technology, and the client, the customer cannot see themselves anywhere on the page. So when we do our research, we will say, okay, your conversion rate is X and we want to get to this. This is where we're aiming for. But in addition to that, your emotional resonance grade is 5, meaning you're hitting all this stuff. Like you've got a good foundation, but these are the pieces that are missing. Your messaging isn't doing too well. Your storytelling is missing something, or the way you've built the customer journey isn't working very well for your customers because they need something else first before you send them to the free trial page or whatever. So we start with those 2 points of where are you on the emotional resonance grade kind of score, and also where are you just in respect for yourself and where you could be. It's not that we don't care about the competition. We absolutely do, but more in a way of how are they positioned? What are they saying? Who are they selling themselves to? And how can you be different and stand out? Because at the end of the day, most brands are the same and they offer the same stuff, and you just won't convince me differently. So you have to position yourself. You asked Joe about, okay, for agencies, is it about the people? And often it is. And for B2B, it's often about something else. And for e-com, it's different. But it's usually about the specific problem that you're solving, and you're solving it in a way that no one else can solve it for you.
On that resonance scale, is it 0 to 10? Is that how you think about it?
Kind of. It makes it easier to think about it in that way. And it's mostly a spreadsheet where we're all filling in numbers based on hundreds of questions.
And then you sort of get an average, and that's sort of your score. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. All right. Let's jump to rapid fire before we close up. And maybe a good first rapid fire question. If you can name them, what's the company that had the best resonance score that you've worked with? Sort of out of the box.
We're currently working with a really cool brand called Callistia. They're skincare products, and they have a good emotional resonance score. And I like that. Also in the acne, we've had a few clients that had really good emotional resonance. I would say, but though the highest we've seen is like around the 7 and 8.
Okay.
And most B2B, especially in SaaS, is lower than 5.
Yeah. Because they try to keep everything so secret, and they want you to like request it, and then they'll tell it to you, seems like. Whereas oftentimes it's just better to get it out. Anyway, if you could ban one word from every landing page, what would it be?
The number one, well, I have a few. The all-in-one solution, the number one, blah, blah, or powered by AI. Those are my 3.
Wow, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Enough.
So conversion optimization, revenue, obviously important. Is there another sort of, I'll call it a vanity metric that you love?
There's 2. One is engagement. I love looking at engagement on a page. I learned how to track that from Dana DiTomaso. She's incredible. And she has this entire process of how she tracks in GA4, which is impossible, how to actually track engagement on a page. And I love it. And the other thing that I track, which isn't really a metric, it's mentions. I love looking at the sentiment of a brand in its different mentions, even if it's like a shout out somewhere, if it's an email that someone sends out, if it's a blog post, if it's a review or a comment on LinkedIn. I use a tool called Alert Mouse.
Yeah.
By Rand Fishkin.
Yeah.
Yes, it is incredible. And we put in our clients' names in there, and it just lets us know when the brands are being mentioned. And it works so much better than the Google Alerts things that never actually works or sends anything. And I get daily mentions of like, here's all the people that mentioned you. And Google Alert comes in once a month and like, here's an article that has nothing to do with your name.
That was 3 years old.
That was 3 years old. Exactly. So we use that. And sentiment is something that we love to track.
Awesome. You mentioned a little bit about Get Uplift using AI for certain components of the process. Is there anything that you would never consider automating? Like it's just that important?
Copy. Copy. Just like, honestly, not automate copy ever. Just never do it.
I think a lot of us think about testing as we can do A/B tests for anything, right? Any client size, whatever. I saw something that you mentioned around a certain minimum number of monthly conversions that you believe makes sense to then do an A/B test. What's that threshold?
I would say that you need a minimum of 300 conversions a month of the same conversion. Otherwise, I wouldn't waste time testing, A/B testing at all.
You're a mom?
I am.
Is there a work-life balance rule you try never to break?
I have a very family-centered schedule. So I work in the early mornings, and then I pick up my kids and I spend the afternoon with them. And then I go back to work in the afternoon, like when they're down, when they've gone to sleep. And that time for me between like 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. is kids time. And I love it. And that's something that I try to keep every day.
I try to approach things pretty similarly, actually. It works for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like there's some days where their dad is with them. That's
right.
a thing.
Yeah, of course.
He's a part of it, but generally that's what I try and do.
All right, last question. I personally have written off skydiving forever. You have jumped, I think, 1,000 times, if I researched that correctly. What was the first time? What was the emotion that you had to get over to actually jump out of that plane? Because that is just not happening for me.
That is that's an embarrassing story. I have told it on stage before, but the story really is that I'm petrified of flying, which is like, I really don't like to fly, which is terrible because my whole job is flying around the world and speaking on stages. But I went to a drop zone with my friend who was skydiving, and there was just a cute guy there that I wanted to impress. So I jumped out of the plane for no apparent reason. Against every fiber of my being, I jumped out of the plane to impress him. Social image, right? And I ended up loving skydiving. And yeah, that's the story. It's quite embarrassing.
Has your approach, this is maybe more of a personal curiosity question of mine, has your approach to that changed since you've had kids?
In terms of skydiving?
Yeah, like is there a different like risk tolerance, I guess?
Oh yeah, I haven't skydived in a while. Mostly because, first of all, I only found out that I was pregnant with my first. I have 2 kids. He's 8 and she's 6. I only found out that I was pregnant quite late, and I had been skydiving for months without knowing. But then when I found out, I was like, okay, you can't skydive anymore. And I do indoor skydiving now, which is a lot safer and fun, but I haven't skydived in a few years. It's a thing. It needs to be discussed internally with myself. It's also it's like addictive. And I think, like for me, at least, it's an incredible sport and it makes me feel phenomenal. Like, absolutely love it, but I don't know how it would fit in my daily life without just quitting everything and leaving.
Right. I've heard that from other people that the adrenaline and the addiction is it's hard to replicate. Yeah. Well, Talia, this has been incredibly educational. I really appreciate you feeding our curiosity with all of our questions. Let everybody know where they can find you online and also the book.
Oh, yeah. The book is called Emotional Targeting, and you can find it on Amazon. It came out just 6 months ago, which is insane.
Congratulations.
It's been that long. Thank you. You can find me on LinkedIn, of course. You can find me on our website, getuplift.co. And you can also find me on Heart Before Carts, which is my new podcast. And I will remember to promote it. There you go.
We'll link to all of those in the show notes. Thanks for joining us on the Page 2 podcast. And for the listeners, if you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe, rate, and review. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.